Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint, episode 256, which I think is some kind of milestone if I'm a computer database of some variety. Today we're playing some more Halo Infinite, but we're not going to focus too much on that. But just to mention, yes, this is the second new map, but unfortunately I didn't have much time to record today, and all of my theatre mode files from when I played decently were all expired, so this is the game you're stuck with, and I do not play well. Again, I only had time to play one game today, and my mouse was acting up, and I'm not good at video games. Anyway, what hyperfixation has grabbed me this week? History, don't you know? I've always been interested in history. I'm sure I've probably talked about it a few times on the show. That history is a wide-spanning word, so I will narrow it down to ancient history and British history from, you know, the old days with the kings and queens and such. And this week I've just been feeding my love of history like there's no tomorrow, because, you know, there might not be any tomorrow. Have you seen geopolitics? I'm joking, it's, you know, it's, whatever. This week I watched through the entirety of a series called Roman Empire on Netflix, which is something I've never really watched before. It's a docudrama, which means half of it is dramatic scenes acted out like it was some kind of historical drama, and half of it is a documentary with historians telling you context for all things. And I've got to say, it's a surprisingly effective combo. I feel like, oh my god, please stop telling me to claim my Microsoft rewards points! God, Microsoft Game Bar is so fucking needy! You might see it pop up in this video, you might hear it go off. I don't know if it actually got caught on recording, but it kept showing up then too. As I was saying, I feel like when you just watch a historical drama, you're watching it like, right, I'm gonna read this up on Wikipedia later and find out that, like, you know, when you watch Gladiator, like, most of this is historically disprovable, but like also you might be lacking some contextual historical information. Like there's a BBC series called, I think it's just called Victoria, about, you guessed it, the reign of Queen Victoria, and I remember watching it like, wait a minute, I don't understand the systems of government here. Like, how much power does Parliament have versus how much power does Queen Victoria have? Because we didn't go over it in school, or if we did, I wasn't paying attention. But no, school history very much likes to focus on World War II, and you guessed it, World War II. But with a docudrama, you can have people slipping in between scenes being like, and this is what the power play was like at the time, and it doesn't take you out of it, although it does make the pacing feel a little odd. I got used to it pretty quickly though. But the one thing I will say is, with any historical fictional thing, don't go into it being like, this is the be-all and end-all of what definitely happened. Because when I went and looked it up later, there was some stuff they omitted for, I assume, time, or, you know, it just wasn't that pertinent to the overall narrative that was being told. But, you know, stuff like the first one's about Commodus, and he co-reigns with his brother? I think this was Commodus I looked up, but they don't even cast his brother in the show. He doesn't even show up. But all the same, I do recommend that series as, like, if you don't know much about ancient history, which I, as much as I love the idea of it, do not know much about ancient history, it's a great place to, I guess, get started and be like, this is the general story of Commodus, of Caesar, of Caligula. The other thing I've been doing is listening to a podcast called The History of Britain. And long-time viewers, if you exist, may remember me talking about a podcast called The History of Rome, which I was listening to back when I was playing a whole bunch of Need for Speed Rivals on the PS4 and platinuming that game. And obviously, attention spans being what they are in this household, I did not get too far through that series. I think I got 17 episodes for it, and there's a few hundred episodes. But similarly to The History of Rome, The History of Britain is a podcast which goes through in, what's the word? It goes through in chronological order, so you're learning about history kind of like in the timeline that it happened from like the 6th century onwards, basically, in Britain. And I think, you know, I'm not going to promise I'm going to listen to all 360 or whatever episodes of that podcast right away. It's probably going to be something that I lose interest in and then come back to at a later point, but I think it is something that I'm going to have an easier time with because, you know, I grew up in this country, I'm British, and I have slightly more contextual information, especially regarding geographical areas and stuff like that. But they're both cracking good podcasts, I recommend them both, but I'm enjoying the British one right now. And learning about the reign of a king of Mercia called Penta? I've already forgotten his name. Here's the thing as well, 80% of his stuff is going to bounce off me, If I really get into it, I might go through and do a second listen through many decades from now just to kind of like cement this stuff back into my brain. But I am getting a general overall idea of the timeline of events and what happened, and that's basically what I want to get out of this. So it's okay if 80% of it bounces off me. Penda. Is it Penda? Oh my god, I should look this up. This is embarrassing. It is Penda. But another fun thing you get to experience is just how many ideas fantasy authors just rip straight from history. Like, you know, the idea of 7 kingdoms. Anyway, sorry, probably a really boring episode of A Weekly Waypoint for most people, because most people find history really boring, which is a shame, because it's not. It really happened. It's stuff that really happened, but it's like it came out of the stories. It's crazy. But video games. What video games have I been playing this week? More Diablo 3. I've been continuing my tear of Diablo 3. I've been able to complete Greater Rift 100 so far on my Necromancer build, which, for those of you not in the know, is... well, the hardest difficulty in the game counts as Greater Rift level 75, and that's Torment 16, so that's kind of where I'm at. This week I went and leveled every single class up to level 70, which is a rare achievement on Xbox, but is pretty damn easy to do this season if you know what gear to equip. Thanks to a lovely handy-dandy Altar of Rites perk, which lets you equip all items from level 1. So I'm glad I got that done before this season went away forever. I know the Diablo 4 quote-unquote open beta is out now, but it's a paid beta, and I'm not really in a position to pre-order right now, so we're just gonna wait for next weekend, which is the actual open beta. Good lord, could I stop burping? The other thing I did this week was Final Fantasy VII Remake finally went on sale, and it's something I've been waiting to go on sale since I got my new PC, and I have been able to play it since. I mean, you know, I own a PS4, I could have played it on PS4, but the reality is that PS4 is kind of gathering dust off somewhere, and I can't be asked to set it up for one game. I know, it's the pinnacle of laziness, but hey, I've got it on PC now, and I got it for 40 quid, which I think is probably a good deal. Actually, I know it's a good deal. It's the lowest it's ever gone, according to istthereanydeal.com, or at least near the lowest it's ever gone. I think maybe £37. It doesn't matter. You may have already seen yesterday's video, which is my actual experiences in the game, so if you want more information on how I feel about a game, you can go and watch that video. That's exciting, isn't it? But just to give a general overview here, I've, you know, it's always been weird for me because I've tried to get into Final Fantasy VII, the original game, a few times, but I think it's aged past me, you know, when people love an old game, but you try and play it, and because you didn't play it back in the day, all of its flaws, or at least all of its aging, stands out to you in a way it doesn't to the people who enjoyed it. It's definitely had a bit of that. I don't like the kind of semi-turn-based real-time system they've got going on in that game, and also I feel like the just general visual tone is a little bit too dark for my liking, like physically dark, and, you know, I like bleak. No, I like melancholy, but I don't like bleak, I guess would be an easy way of putting it. And I guess Final Fantasy VII Remake is still bleak, but something about the way that world is built makes it easier for me to handle in terms of oversaturated bleakosity. But yeah, I'm about 6 hours through that game right now, and I know it's not exactly the same story as the original Final Fantasy VII. It kind of riffs off the original in some kind of weird ways, but I know enough about the original that I'm not lost, and also it does also just tell the original story alongside whatever new stuff it feels like doing, so that's pretty cool. Also worth mentioning that I have finally decided to take a break from Final Fantasy XIV. My attention span doesn't normally last as long as it did with that game this time around, and I'm sure I'll be back into it the second we see more about the next patch or whatever, but I'm still active in the Grinding Gear community in the meantime, so I don't see it as too much of a problem. But yeah, one other thing which happened this week, which I want to talk about here in the Weekly Waypoint, because it kind of hit home for me, is the death of Lance Reddick. For those of you who don't know, Lance Reddick is an actor and video game voice actor who is best known to me as Commander Zavala in Destiny 2. It's been a while since a celebrity death has shocked me. I don't tend to be too rocked by that kind of thing, but I guess that's probably because a lot of my personal idols luckily are still, around. But the news about Lance Reddick certainly hit me, and I just wanted to mention it here because, I've played a lot of Destiny 2 early on in the Weekly Waypoint, and anyone who knows me knows I have my issues with Destiny 2. I haven't played it since the end of Shadowkeep, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist in my pantheon of favourite worlds still. Whenever I want to go back to that game, it's to experience that world. I know a lot of people have issues with the story, but that's a video for another time. What I want to talk about is the fact that my favourite character in Destiny 2 is Commander Zavala, and it's because of the performance Lance Reddick brings to the role, or brought to the role. I feel like Cade 6 is the more popular option because of the, funny dialogue, but I don't know, something about this stoic, heroic guy who still has, the light of mirth in him. It shows occasionally, but not all the time. I don't know, I loved him, and I don't think it was just the writing of that character. I think it was Lance Reddick's performance, and I guess I'm in this lucky state of being where I haven't seen a lot of Lance Reddick's work. I haven't played most of the Horizon franchise. I haven't watched through The Wire or the John Wick movies or a number of other things that he's best known for, but I do know that whenever I see him on screen or hear his voice, it brings a smile to my face because he's just a great dude. He was only 60, which, I know, when I was a kid I was like, 60's old, people are old when they're 60, but now I'm like, damn, that was too early, and it was so shocking and sudden. And I don't know, people talk about, I've seen, it's I don't want to bring a negative minority into this in terms of like angry voices on the internet. I guess they're not angry voices, but there is a small minority of people I've seen around who don't understand the mourning of someone who you didn't personally know. And just in case any of those people are watching this video, I feel like I should explain, because I don't know, I guess not everyone's been at that point where an idol that they have known has died, or maybe they might not have even experienced death that much in general. Like, I take that for granted sometimes, that people just are at points in their life where they haven't even experienced grief and they don't understand it. But I feel like I want to tell those people that it's okay to grieve for someone that you didn't personally know. They were still a personality in your life. Like, I followed Lance Reddick on social media sometimes. I was aware of the general idea of him and who he was and the kind of person he was outside of his work. And when that person dies, it does affect you. It's kind of impossible for it not to. And to sit there and say to yourself, well, these feelings I'm having about this person aren't valid because I didn't know them, is deeply damaging. I did this when I was 16 years old. It wasn't with a celebrity, but it was with someone I followed online by the name of Nathan Wills. He was an amazing bloke, and sadly, trigger warning, but he took his own life years ago, and I was kind of in this pseudo friendship, pseudo watcher. I guess you could call it we didn't have a term back then, but you could have called it a parasocial relationship, I'm sure. Like, we had limited interactions, but I never knew the guy personally. But it deeply affected me when he died, and I spent so long being confused about the fact that it deeply affected me and not addressing those feelings in healthy ways. Like, I bottled them up, and obviously when you bottle something that strong, it comes out. You can't stop it coming out. It comes out eventually, and not always in the healthiest or best way. So if anyone listening to this has been affected by the death of someone that they don't personally know, do know that your feelings are valid. And just because you didn't personally know that person, it doesn't mean that their life didn't affect you, and that you shouldn't be sad, and that you shouldn't celebrate their life, and have a sense of them being dear to you in a kind of a personal way. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say here at the end of this video. And I'm gonna miss Lance Reddick. I definitely, my first thought when I heard the news was, but there was still so much he had left to do. It felt like his career only really took off in the last decade or so, and I was like, obviously, he was a person outside of his professional work, but as someone who knew him for his professional work, my first thought was, but I wanted to see more from him. It's not fair. And all the other stuff came shortly after that, but hey, he's gone. But he'll be with us forever as our Commander Zavala, and as the other roles he played and the joy he brought to people. So Thank you, Lance Reddick.